These books are so awesome. Are you enjoying these readings? I am so enjoying these readings. If I could read the entire book to you, I would. But I can't. These are the best. They all occur at the same time. They're sequential. It is so awesome. We started with the Ladies' Command, and we did the Buccaneer at Heart last week. And we did an extra chapter too, because I was so into it. So there's an extra chapter posted online, like an hour or so after the first video. And we're up to our Daredevil Snared this week, and the last book where it all comes to a climax. All 3 books. The ending is here. It's one continuous story. So in book 3, The Daredevil Snared, Captain Caleb Frobisher, the other brother, hedonistic youngest son of a seafaring dynasty, wants to be taken seriously. Seizing the next leg of the covert mission is his brothers are pursuing. He acts decisively and effectively in securing the mission's objective. But responsibility has taken root, and he remains in the jungle to ensure the mission's ultimate goal. Katherine Fortescue has left a life of poverty and came to Freetown as a governess, only to be kidnapped and forced to oversee the child workforce at a mine. Guarded by well-armed, well-trained mercenaries, the captors have lost all hope of escape. Then Katherine meets a handsome man, a captain, that brings the promise of rescue. Shall we take a peek inside? And if you could, like and subscribe to the D. Louise book series. Christina, hope you're having a good day. And we have in the beginning all of our cast members. It's in all the books. So we'll do a little bit. Oh, and there's the settlement. July 14th, 1824. Jungle east of Freetown, West Africa. Caleb Frobisher moved steadily forward through the jungle shadows. His company of 24 men followed in single file. No one spoke. The silence was eerie, stretching nerves taut. Halt! Stop! That way! Up! 2, 3! You know, watch all those spy movies, and the cops go in, and they go like this, and then they hold up this, and then they go like that, and they go like this. Who knows? Maybe it was invented back here. Hales Bales, Philip Lassille at Caleb's heels. Surely it can't be much further. It's only mid-morning. You can't be wilting already. Philip snorted. Caleb continued along the path that was little more than an animal track. They had to consistently duck and weave under and around palm trees and low branches festooned with clinging vines. Somewhere ahead lay the slavers' camp they'd come to find, or so Caleb feebly hoped. Despite his determination to unwavering abide by the rule book throughout this mission, thus proving to all and sundry, about his family especially, that he could be trusted with this serious mission, this absolute life and death serious mission. 3 nights before, Caleb in his ship, the Prince, closely followed by his old comrade in adventure, Philip, in his ship, the Raven, had slipped into the estuary on the night tide. They kept to the north shore, well away from the shipping lanes leading into Freetown Harbor, and sailed deeper down the estuary and into Tagrin Bay, reducing the risk of detection by any naval vessels going into and out of the harbor. According to Robert's information, the West Africa squadron should now be in port, and Caleb would prefer to avoid having to explain himself to Vice Admiral Decker. Unfortunately, the villagers hadn't known the name of the slavers' leader. Caleb clung to hope that he and his men weren't going to find themselves at some other slavers' camp entirely and trudged on. They'd set out on the previous morning, leaving skeleton crews on their ships and taking the strongest and most experienced of their men. He almost didn't trust his eyes when, all through the dense curtain of palm trees and vines, he glimpsed a pale glowing, indicating a clearing where daylight flooded, banished the jungle's pervasive gloom. Caleb stopped and held up a hand. The filing men halted and froze. His senses questioning a rumble of male voices were faint but discernible. "We're 20 to 25 yards from the perimeter," Philip whispered. Caleb nodded. The wider path must be the one between the camp and the mine. After one last searching look around, he ventured into the wider path, placing his feet with care. He followed the wider, well-trodden trail, but halted just before a curve that by his reckoning would expose him to those in the clearing. Instead, he slipped silently sideways to his right into the cover of jungle. Quietly, he skirted the edge of the clearing, continuing to move slowly and with care, shifting from north to west. Caleb returned his attention to the clearing and settled to study Cale's homestead. He recognized the layout from Robert's nose, the horseshoe-shaped central space with a large barrack-like hut across the head and 4 smaller huts, 2 on each side. Caleb and his men were at the open of the horseshoe, virtually directly opposite the main barracks. According to Robert's diagram, that meant the path from Freetown should be somewhere to their right. Having established that reality matched the picture of the camp he carried in his mind, Caleb focused on the people moving in and out of the huts and sitting around the central fire. After a while, Philip leaned closer and whispered, "That large one, he acts like the leader, but from Robert's description, he can't be Cale." Caleb focused on the slaver in question, heavy-set man, tall. "I think that he must be the man who leads Cale's men in the settlement. Interesting that he's here. Useful that he's here. If we eradicate all here, chances are Cale's operation won't simply rise again under some new leader." "It doesn't look like they have any captives. The doors of the smaller huts are open, and I haven't seen any hint that anyone's inside." "I haven't either." Just then, one of the men hovering about the large pot slung over the fire raised his head. He looked towards the barracks and yelled, "Stew's ready." Seconds later, the barracks doors opened. Caleb grinned as a slaver of medium height and weary, with a disfiguring scar marring his features. From Robert's description, the man had to be Cale. "How helpful," Philip murmured. They did have a lookout on that path. Philip studied the man as he joined the fellows. "It doesn't as look they're seriously concerned over unexpected company. Odds are there was only the one lookout." "That's the way I read it, too." They had barely taken their mouthfuls when the muted tramp of feet had everyone, Cale and his men, as well as Caleb, Philip, and their company, looking towards the path. The same path they'd briefly been on 15 or so minutes before. 4 men, slavers by their dress, and Cale's men by their composure appeared. They hailed Cale and exchanged greetings with others. "So you got our recent guest settled, then?" Cale's words came in a distinctive, grave rasp. "Aye, and Juba sent his thanks. I'd be thrilled to give him more if only those blighters in the settlement would let us do what we do best. Sadly, they're the ones who pay the piper, and they pay His Highness Dubois, too, as he'll have to make do with those we can give him. Sit and eat, you've earned it." The 4 did, gratefully settling with the rest. Conversation was non-existent while the men ate. "That's 17 now," Philip murmured. "Not quite so easy." Caleb softly grunted. He verified Philip's head count, and thankfully, the impulse that had prompted him to invite Philip and his crew to his mission a day out of Southampton, one of the prince's main water kegs, had sprung a leak. Determined to adhere to the maximum of take no unnecessary force, Caleb had made the small detour to the Canary Islands before he'd even mooned in Las Palmas Harbor. He spotted the distinctive black hull of the Raven, so he invited him to come with us. So they're observing the camp area. If we arrived earlier while they were all gathering as they are, distracting with eating, would have been a good time to attack. Caleb shrugged. In days gone by, he might have leaped precipitately at the chance and rushed in. But for today and the foreseeable future, he was determined to adhere to the script of a reliable and responsible commander. He could almost hear the voices of his 3 older brothers, all of whom would lecture him to take time and plan. Caleb spooned up the last of his stew, chewed, swallowed, then looked across the fire pit at the large man Philip had noted earlier. Rogers, you and your crew can rest up, then head back to the settlement mid-afternoon. If we don't find a message from Muldoon waiting, no suggestion of who to grab next, use your own judgment. See if there are any more sailor boys we can snatch. Du Bois at least will be grateful. We'll see what we can find. We need to attack before Roger leaves, Philip said. Caleb studied the group, then replied in the barest murmur. They've just eaten their main meal for the day, and it was stew, heavy. In this heat, an hour from now, they're all going to be half asleep. So, they're gonna attack, but I know it fails. Let's see. Caleb knew Philip wasn't referring to how he made the plan, but to the way he doubled up the less experienced, less strong fighters among the men. 5 of his men and 5 of Philip's, as well as himself and Philip, were able to take care of themselves in any company against slavers of the ilk of Cale and his crew, all of whom would without a doubt prove to be vicious fighters. I just want us all to walk out of this and given the climate with as few cuts as possible. We'd better get into position, into close quarters. So helpful of Cale to take 3 of the men with him, Philip murmured as they scuttled into position. All he needs to do is stay here for a few minutes longer. Carter's in position, Renee's are well. Now, so they go and attack. The slaver was shorter than Caleb's 6+ feet, and scrawny to boot. Caleb, longer reach and greater strength, soon paid to the villains. He fell, rolling up. Caleb yanked his sword free of the man's chest and turned. So they do the fighting, and he gets captured at some point. Let's see, they go on. All back to the raised front of the barracks porch. The man was devilish, keeping a semicircle of Caleb and Philip's men at bay, while with a pair of flashing blades. With Robert's description of Cale's potential menace etched in his brain, Caleb had warned their men that unless they had an easy and definitely lethal shot at Cale, they were to keep him but not engage. As Caleb and Philip joined their men, the circle definitely fractional, leaving the pair of them standing shoulder to shoulder facing Cale. They'd halted at respectable distance. Cale took stock of his blades now. The slavers' leader was shorter than Caleb, shorter than Philip, but Cale was the epitome of weary, and the way he held himself at ease, on the balls of his feet, poised to explode in action with his cursory twin blades, slightly curved, elongated scimitars held firmly and perfectly balanced. He was fast, and he was lethally fast. Caleb met Cale's eye. In the art of manipulation, Caleb knew beyond question that he could get Cale lessons, but that wasn't the point here. He knew he was being goaded, that Cale wanted to fight him, believing Cale would win, and that doing so would somehow win his freedom, at least from immediate dispatch. In situations like this, for men such as Cale, surviving even an hour meant an hour's more of chance to escape. If Caleb had been operating as usual, he would have responded immediately, and he and Cale would fight. He'd never walk away from a challenge or a fight in his life. However, this time, what was right? Didn't that demand some answer, not just on his part, but on behalf of his whole company? Didn't Cale challenge, speak to question the validity of why they were here, and more the justification of what they had done, the lives they'd already taken that day? Caleb, we are judge and jury here. Curs such as his have no claim to the honor of a fair fight in lieu of a sentence. Who said I intended to fight fairly? Cale certainly won't. Cale's pale gaze hadn't left Caleb's face. Philip might not as well spoken for all the reaction Cale gave. What, son? Cat got your tongue? No, I'm merely debating the irony of engaging with vermin such as you over the value of justice. Cale blinked, then exploded into action. Blade swinging, he launched himself at Caleb. In less than a minute, Caleb was wishing he'd let Philip shoot the bastard. Cale was beyond lethal, and he was a better swordsman than Caleb. He was no slouch, but Cale was in a class of his own. Playing defense wasn't Caleb's strong suit, but he forced himself to do so, to concentrate on keeping Cale's blades at bay and letting the man batter at him, trying to break through. He was justice, he represented justice, and Cale could try as hard as he wished to break through the guard and triumph, but he wouldn't. Caleb wouldn't let him. But Caleb had already danced aside. He had far longer legs before Cale could recover. Caleb stepped in and smashed the boot into the side of Cale's knee, and he screamed. Caleb reached for Cale's shoulder, intending to push the man to his knees. Aside. Caleb flung himself to the left as Philip's pistol barked. Cale crumbled, then fell. I believe Philip has shot the guy. Caleb snorted. I believe he said that justice has been served. Philip shook his head, then handed the pistol back to Renee. Then Philip bent, picked up Cale's twin blades, and ceremoniously presented them hilt first across the sleeve to Caleb. And to the victor goes the spoils. Philip had climbed to stand beside him. On the voyage to Freetown, Philip had read Robert's journals, so understood Caleb's direction. Sadly, I agree. We need to make Cale and his men disappear. Poof, vanished without a trace, with no evidence of any fight left either. They would feel the effects of battle later, but for now they were all still keyed up with energy to spare. It took them 4 hours of hard work, but finally the camp lay neat and tidy and silent, oddly serene, as if waiting for occupants to arrive. They carted the bodies into the jungle along the unused track to the east, then found a clearing a little way off the track and buried all the bodies in one large grave. Caleb had fetched Robert's journal from his pack, along with the sketches of Aileen Hopkins, who had joined Robert on his leg of the mission, and made certain of slavers by comparing those with the dead men. Caleb felt certain, as well as Cale, that they moved not only the large leader of the slavers in the settlement, but also the one Aileen dubbed the Pied Piper, the slaver with the melodious voice who was key to luring children from their homes. With any luck, we've completely exterminated this particular nest of vermin. Once all that was done, Philip paused beside Caleb. All in a good day's work. So Cale was mysteriously vanished, and no one likely to guess to where, much less why. Caleb walked into the clearing to find crude tents already erected and a fire burning brightly beneath the cookpot. Aromas much more enticing than the charm scent of death on the steam. They all ate, all but slumped. They checked wounds, then when the meal was ready, everyone ate. The fire burned low and quietly, with nothing more than murmured goodnights. They settled on their blankets and reached for sleep. Tomorrow they would embark on the next stage of their mission. Tomorrow they would take the path to the mine. Chapter 2. Katherine Fortescue glanced at her companion, Harriet Fraser. The pair of them had been elected to stretch their legs in a stroll along the mining compound during their mid-morning break from their work in the cleaning shed. Of course, the real purpose of this stroll was to facilitate communication while they worked. They could talk freely with no one likely to overhear their exchanges. The John to whom Harriet had referred was her sweetheart, Captain John Dixon, the erstwhile Army engineer who had been the first of their company to be kidnapped from Freetown. When Dixon had refused the mercenary leader Dubois' invitation to plan and implement the opening of a mine to exploit a newly discovered pipe of diamonds from unnamed backers, Dubois had merely smiled coldly, and the next thing Dixon had known, Harriet had joined him in his captivity. Threats against Harriet the Du Bois had used to force Dixon to acquiesce to his demands were quite simply unspeakable. Harriet carried a fine scar on her cheek that Dixon still regarded with sorrow and remembered horror. But Harriet bore the mark with pride. In her eyes, indeed, in the eyes of all the captives now there, Dixon had only done what he had to do, what he'd been forced to do to ensure that he and Harriet survived. Shading her eyes, Katherine glanced up at the pair of mercenaries on the lookout duty in the tower. Given how our output from the shed has been dwindling, I can sadly see John's point. Let's meet tonight and see how the others feel. There's only so long we can put Du Bois off without damaging our own position. The others were the de facto leader of their small community, the officers who had been kidnapped, plus Katherine and Harriet. Katherine had been taken because, as a governess, she had had experience managing children. But another of her skills was fine needlework, and Du Bois had quickly recognized the sharpness of her eye and the quality of her work in cleaning shed. He had effectively made her the spokesperson and leader of the women and children. As she and Harriet continued their promenade, the hems of the drab, featureless gowns they'd been given to wear still fallen leaves. Katherine contemplated, as she was sure every one of their number did these days, the delicate balance they were striving to maintain. It's a constant juggle. I know it weighs heavily on John, and he's doing a wonderful job. We wouldn't have any hope if it wasn't for him. We all understand the dilemma. We have to keep giving Du Bois diamonds enough to appease his masters, whoever the blackguards are, while at the same time holding back as much as we can to stave off the time when the deposit is exhausted and they decide to shut the mine. I'm thinking when the mine goes, they go too. That's kind of sad. That was Du Bois was being very well paid to ensure that the mine was properly exploited and the raw diamonds dispatched to secret and to Amsterdam on behalf of his masters. Just as who those masters were, no one had learned yet. However, although Du Bois was French and his band of mercenaries hailed from every quarter, the general consensus among the captives was that the blackguards behind the shame were English. She and Harriet rounded the base of the tower, passing the supply hut beside it, the large kitchen with its wide palm frond covered overhang beneath which three small fire pits with cook box suspended above them were watched over by Du Bois' huge cook. The man was the grumpiest individual Katherine had ever met, perennially scowling at everybody, even Du Bois. They couldn't escape unless they got everyone out all at once, and until they knew in which direction safety lay and how long it would take them to reach it. Skirting the captives' communal area, a circle of logs surrounding a large fire pit, Katherine and Harriet walked slowly past the long buildings where the men slept and on the past open maw of time. Unless dispatched on some other chore, all the male captives labored inside the tunnel, now more than 50 yards long, that had been hacked inch by foot, more or less straight into the side of a steep hill that rose abruptly from the jungle floor as if elemental force had thrust it upward. That was up to them to save themselves was now accepted by all. Initially, they waited, simply surviving in expectation that help would arrive from the form of a rescue party sent from the settlement. It seemed inconceivable that this many adults, women as well, many with positions and connection in the community, let alone the army of children, could be snatched from one place without any hue and cry. That's right. Someone should have noticed. Someone should have taken direction. Is there someone out there? Is Mr. Frobisher just feet away from them and they don't know it yet? How is Frobisher going to make contact? Well, it's a little kid. Um, I don't know where it is. But they're trying to make a plan. And they're trying to figure out they need to save enough diamonds so that, let's say the guy wants a pound of diamonds a day. And so they mine, in the beginning, maybe they mine 2 or 3 pounds. So they give him 1 pound every single day, trying to stretch out to hope that they can come up with a plan to rescue themselves or someone rescues them. But they need the time. They need to stall as long as possible. So at one point, they see a little kid, Caleb and Philip, who are outside the camp, see this little kid walking around. And he catches him. And he says, I've been sent to look for the people, English people kidnapped from Freetown. He spoke slowly, clearly. We think they're being used as labor for a mine. We're searching for the mine. Do you know where it is? When the boy did not respond, Caleb remembered that the mine was conjecture and rephrased, Do you know where the people are? Who are you? I've come from London. People have been searching for those kidnapped, but we've had to do it bit by bit, carefully, to ensure that the bad people who are behind the kidnapping don't get wind of us coming to help. The boy was still staring at him, but now he was studying him, his gaze flitting from Caleb's face over his clothes, his sword, his boots. I'm going to crouch down. Moving slowly, Caleb did. If he stepped closer to the boy, he would have towered over him, too intimidating. Sure enough, as Caleb settled on his haunches, the boy noticeably relaxed. There are more of you, aren't there? Yes, I asked them to stay back so we didn't frighten you. There are 24 men back on the path. So there's 25 of you altogether, all armed? The boy frowned. That's not going to be enough, he said. There's more mercenaries than that at the mine, and they're all fearsome fighters. We're not the rescue party, we're the advance scouts. Our mission, and he could almost hear his eldest brother, Royd, groaning over telling a young boy he didn't know anything about such details, is to locate the mining camp and send word of it back to London. Then the rescue party will be dispatched, and they will have the numbers to put paid mercenaries to rest. They're never going to believe me when I tell them, but the others are going to be in alt. We've been waiting ever so long for anyone to come. Keep it quiet, he said. Before you tell anyone, you need to remember that our mission must remain secret. If the mercenaries realize rescue is coming, it could be very dangerous for all the people he kidnapped. The boy's delight faded. All right, so you're going to do now. You found us. I'm hoping you can take us closer to the mine, to someplace where we can see but not be seen. Can you do that? Yes. But before we do that, I want to hear what you can tell us about the mine and the encampment. What's your name? My name is Deacon. I'm Caleb. All right with you, Deacon? I'd like to call my men closer. So he calls his men closer. Caleb fills them in, and Caleb is now going to make daily trips into the forest to get intelligence from Caleb, and he's going to speak to Deacon, and eventually Deacon will tell Katherine and the rest of the crew and the men and the campmen, and everybody will know about it, and everybody will plan. And at some point, a little bit of a spoiler here, Caleb does get captured so he can be an inside man of the situation to help when the other group comes. And the other group is coming. So next week, be prepared for the rescue. The long rescue. I love these books. They're awesome. So I hope you will, if you haven't already, go back and check out The Lady's Command. And then go check out The Buccaneered Heart And make sure you tune into the second volume of this. I did an extra couple chapters afterwards because I was just so taken up with it and I didn't want it to end. If I do a video too long, my upload speed is 2. So it takes me up to 15 to 20 hours to upload a video. So that's why I try and keep them a little on the shorter side. And so we finished the Daredevil Snared today. And you'll have to read the book to find out what happens and how they make their intelligence exchange with the camp, and they get involved in the camp, and he gets captured so he can be on the inside. And then we will have to wait for Boyd Frobisher to come to the rescue next week. Have a good one. I am so enjoying these books. I hope you were enjoying them too. Have a good one.